Masculine man should not focus on happiness. Masculine man should focus on purpose. If you are so inclined to find happiness, to find joy, to be ecstatic, you will so easily fall prey to short-term gratification instead of long-term fulfillment. Happiness, generally speaking, is a state of mind. It's an emotion. So a lot of this comes from short-term gratification and short-term pleasure. However, purpose is long-term fulfillment. But you have to understand, the more you choose short-term gratification, the harder it will be to find your purpose, and the harder it will be to endure the pain that comes from pursuing your mission, your goal, your calling in life. In the modern world we live in, there are so many ways to get distracted, to fall prey to those short-term pleasures and gratification, and so easily think that this is happiness. But unfortunately, seeking happiness often leads to depression, because you have to understand those short-term pleasures are indirectly poison, are indirectly painful, because the more we indulge in that cheap dopamine, the more our brain gets tolerant and the harder it is to enjoy other things in our life. Take food, for example. I have kind of an addiction to food, a soft addiction to food, if you will. And the more I eat, the more I want to eat. It's not like I'm hungry. Obviously, at one point, my stomach is too full to enjoy, to be able to eat more. But even if it's full, I could easily wait a few hours and eat the same thing over and over again if I had it my way, if my ego had its way. And it is very dangerous, because all I'm seeking is that cheap dopamine that comes from sugary food, from salty food, from sweet food. So I need to control that short-term pleasure addiction. But the same goes for Netflix, for drugs, for porn, for sex, for chasing women, so on and forth. The more we get hooked on those short-term pleasure, the harder it will be to be on our purpose, to take the call to adventure. For those of you who have read Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey, you have to understand there is pain when you indulge in those short-term pleasures. So even though you might think this is happiness, and it might feel like happiness when you are doing it, unfortunately, it's just a release of short-term, cheap dopamine. And the more you do it, the more your brain becomes tolerant to it, and the more you need of it. And you cannot get enough of something that was not supposed to fulfill you to begin with. You cannot get enough. That is the problem. So even though it started as looking for joy, looking for happiness, it becomes pain, because all those short-term pleasures have their counterpart in pain. So pain is part of life. And here you have your purpose, your mission, your goal in life. But because you are not willing to face that pain, you are not willing to embrace the pain that comes to finding your path, that comes from pursuing a goal, but that is choosing pain. Those are growing pain. You cannot avoid pain in life, even if you do those short-term pleasures. So you might as well seek the right kind of pain. You are not really wanting that pain, but you understand that that pain comes from pursuing worthwhile goals, from having discipline, from having consistency. All of it can become painful, boring, frustrating. But those pain make you a hungry person. If when you work out, when you start learning a language, when you do martial arts, when you pursue a career, when you are starting a business, all of it comes with the unknown, and it is painful. And some things are boring, some things are mundane and tedious. But you need to be able to deal with that pain, to become a stronger person, to achieve your goals. Short-term pleasure will lead to your demise, even though it might seem pleasurable when you're doing it. But pleasure has no limit. When you are here, when you can be contented, when you can find fulfillment in the work, fulfillment in discipline, fulfillment in meditation, in contemplation, fulfillment in working out. Those are the pain that will make you stronger, wiser, more reasonable. It's much easier to self-actualize. So choose wisely, short-term pleasures or long-term fulfillment. The choice is yours. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Sebastian, your addiction recovery coach, and I'm here for those of you give up on, desexualize your mind, and other addictive compulsions. And we do that with semen retention, with meditation, with working out, and other disciplines that will help you find your path. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you very soon.